دكتور عبد الله ما نسمعك.
أهلا، السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.
أهلا ومرحبا، صباحكم الله بالخير. Inshallah, today I will be the moderator for this session. I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Prof. Ahmed باهمام. Prof. Ahmed, mashallah, is currently a professor of pulmonary and sleep medicine at King Saud University. King Saud University awarded him the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2016 for his contribution to sleep medicine research. He published around 300 scientific articles and more than 45 chapters and 2 books. He is the editor-in-chief of the Natural and Science of Sleep journal and associate editor and member of the editorial board of several international medical journals. Prof. BaHammam has received several grants for his research. He is the executive director of academic affairs at the Medical City in King Saud University and the director of Prince Naif Health Research Center and the director of the University Sleep Research Center and the ex-director of Research Ethics Council at College of Medicine in King Saud University. Okay, Prof. BaHammam, the floor is all yours.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Abdullah, Dr. Lina, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you for the invitation. I'll time myself, inshallah, in the coming 60 minutes. I'll take you a journey in how to write a winning grant. I'll stop the camera so not interfere with the transmission. So I modified the title to be more attractive into how to write a winning research proposal. I always like this topic of looking into Quran, and I do a lot of work on that with the sleep. I published several articles. If we look to البحث العلمي في القرآن, we find something that supports that. I'll put quickly some example in one slide, then we'll move to the main topic. Animation. Okay. اوكي. ومن آياته منامكم بالليل والنهار وابتغاءكم من فضله من ذلك الآيات القوم يسمعون سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم قال بل لبثت 100 عام انظر إلى طعامك وشرابك كم يتسنى وانظر إلى حمارك ونجعلك آية للناس وانظر إلى العظام كيف ننجزها ثم نكسوها لحما. It's all research and to reach to believe للإيمان. إذ قال إبراهيم رب أرني كيف تحيي الموتى قال أولم تؤمن قال بلى ولكن ليطمئن قلبي قال خذ 4 من الطير فصلهن إليك ثم اجعل على كل جبل منهن جزءا ثم ادعهن يأتينك سعيا. يعني a real experiment. فبعث الله غرابا يبحث في الأرض ليريه كيف يواري سوءة أخيه قال يا ويلتى أعجزت أن أكون مثل هذا الغراب فأواري سوءة أخي. And my favorite and the best example where we have a good proof of concept and a real experiment with hypothesis, objectives, and design method to answer the objectives. أرسلت إليهن واعتدلهن متكئا وآتت كل واحدة منهن سكينا وقال تخرج عليهن فلما رأينه أكبرنه وقطعن أيديهن وقلنا حاشا لله من هذا بشرا إن هذا إلا ملك كريم. If we think of this ayah, we see that there is hypothesis and there is objective for the experiment and then there is a real experiment to prove the concept. ففي القرآن يضع لنا a lot of things. Anyways, we'll move now. When we talk about grant acceptance or publishing paper, a lot of obstacles, and we'll see inshallah in this talk how we can overcome obstacles. In my presentations, usually I put a lot of slides and sometimes I talk fast because talking slowly, putting this number of slides make people more sleepy. You keep the same slide and talk the same slide for 5 minutes. So bear with me, and this will be recorded so you can review it later. So let us start by proposal writing or grant writing. So in this talk, we'll start by the deliberation, which is the most important part before writing the proposal, meaning talking about an original idea, a research question, hypothesis, the main and the most important part of any grant. Then identify the proper format, write objectives, construct suitable methodology to answer the objectives, build budget plan, process the proposal submission, and then why proposals are rejected. You have to start early. There is always an announcement for a proposal for grants. Start long time before to be there. Don't wait until 1 week or a few days before then you want to submit a winning or a competitive grant. This will not happen. Start early and prepare everything. So before writing the proposal, I quote this from Norm Bertelman. He said from the NIH, he said, there is no grantmanship that will turn a bad idea into a good one. But there are many ways to disguise a good idea. So you have to start with a good idea. If you start with a bad idea, you will not get anything. So before writing the proposal, what you need to have a successful research project? You need an original and novel idea. This is always a must. You cannot start with an idea that has been well investigated. You need good mentorship if you are junior or new in this field. You cannot start alone. If you are well established, then you are well established. A well-written proposal. So for beginners, always start in association with a researcher, a mentor. So who's a good mentor? A good mentor is a competent researcher. This is number one. Number two, he's secure about his academic success. So what does it mean, secure about his academic success? He is willing to sit in the passenger seat and let you drive. A mentor who will compete with you, whose name is the first, and who will get this and who will get that, this is not a good mentor. So you have to start with a mentor who's secure about his academic success and about his credentials, and he's willing to guide you, not to compete with you. Unfortunately, it's difficult to find this kind of mentors, but this is the ideal mentor. Someone who likes mentoring. Is this a question or this is a... Should I continue?
Oh, yes, continue.
Yes. Okay. A mentor who's willing to spare some of his busy time for mentorship. So these are the characteristics of a good mentor. Then start by formulating a research question. How do you formulate a research question? This is the most difficult part in any research, to come with a good question. If you come with a good question, then you can build around it a good grant. But without a good question, you cannot make a good grant. So to formulate a good question, you have to have good observation. We are clinicians, and in this grant proposal, I'll talk more about clinical research and about quantitative research because this is my main area. I don't do much of qualitative research. So good observation. You are in the clinic, you are in your practice, you are in your lab. You should have always a good observation. From this good observation, you can come with a good question. You need an exploring brain, meaning that a brain that will not accept things for facts, will always challenge anything. Challenge it and ask. Will not accept things as it is. And you need, at the end, probably less important, but it's important, but less than the previous 2 points, which is good knowledge. You need good knowledge in the topic because then you know that this is maybe worth doing or not. If you don't have the good knowledge, you can check with your mentor who usually have that good knowledge. Then another important point, you have to have passion, interest in your question. This is very important. When I talk, I'll give you some real examples of my research all through. So this talk will be mainly about real examples of real world to see how you can make a good grant. You have to have good passion for what you do. Without passion يعني شغف. Without passion, you will not be successful. So I'll talk to you about sleep. This is my main area, and we face a lot of challenges. But if you have passion and interest, then you will continue. And the last thing, but not the least, you have to have joy. You have to enjoy what you are doing. استمتع فيه. If you are doing it as just I have to do it for the promotion, that's fine. Then you get promoted, but you don't have the joy. You will not continue after the professorship. You won't continue to do something. So a joy, and always I want to do research because I will learn something new, not just because I want to publish and increase the number of publications. Albert Einstein, he said, the important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity يعني الفضول الجيد has its own reason for existing. And I always tell my students that there is no stupid questions, but there are stupid answers. And وجاء في الأثل، ما أعتقد واحد يعرف إنه هذا أثل، العلم خزائن مفاتيحها السؤال ألا فاسأل. Without questions, you will not get the knowledge. You have always to put a question. So how do you formulate a research question? The question has to be clear. It provides enough understandable specifics. Something specific, then I'll give you examples of this. Narrowly focused. It can be answered thoroughly in a limited space. Concise. It's expressed in the fewest possible words. Complex. It's not answerable with simple yes or no. Though you may start with simple yes and no, if the knowledge is not known, then go into more complex questions, but rather requires synthesis and analysis of ideas. Arguable. Its potential answers are open to debate, because this is the essence of research. Research, there is always debate and ideas. It's philosophy, because if there is no debate, if it is fact, everyone knows that, then there is no research. If you say, at this stage of knowledge, my research question is smoking harmful, there is no debate in this. Everyone knows that. So its potential answers are open to debate rather than accepted facts, and should be precise and testable, because then you will design your methods to answer your research question. So it has to be precise and testable. And it has to be important and compelling, because you may think of something that people, they don't think it's important and compelling. And I faced this problem a lot when I started. I started in the late 90s when I joined the university in 98. Every year I submit for, at that time, they call البحوث الوطنية. I submit a proposal for sleep medicine research, and every year they reject it. Actually, I don't get even a reply that they rejected. Then I checked with the secretary of the committee, and they told me that they don't even include your research proposals in the discussion of the committee. Just they reject it at the level of the secretaries, because they think it's not important and compelling to include research about sleep medicine. So this is not right, but you have to see what the committee thinks and try to convince them. Okay, so I'll give you now some examples of good and bad research questions. A bad question: does medication help alleviate attention deficit hyperactivity disorder symptoms? It's a vague one. A good one, which is more specific and testable: how effective are the various types of medication in treating elementary students with attention deficit disorder? So we have specific group, we have something that we can test, we can focus in a group. A bad question: how do artificial sweeteners affect people? A good question will be: how does aspartame affect postmenopausal women who suffer from migraine? So we have specific group, we have specific intervention, which is the aspartame, specific group to study menopausal women with migraine. So we have something specific that we can study and come with a good answer. An example of a bad question: what are the advantages and disadvantages of cell phone use in schools? General, it's not completely bad. You can do it, but you can phrase it to be better. I don't know. Are people sending me? Please, if you, I get a lot of messages now. If the organizer, they want something, please interrupt me and talk, because I cannot read my messages. So a good question will be: how does restricting cell phone use in school affect elementary school children's social interaction? So we have specific group, which is elementary school children, and we are studying a specific item, which is social interaction. A bad question will be: do violent video games cause players to act violently? It's a broad question, it's difficult to get all the information. A more specific question, which is testable and focused, will be: why do Saudi parents feel that violent video games content has a negative influence in their children? So then you assess the feelings of parents about specific group of children. You may start with a broad question, and I'll show you an example how we started with a broad question, some of my research, because if the knowledge is not known, then you get focused down until you reach to some specific questions. So a format that's used to formulate a research question called the BI, which is population or a problem, clearly defined, intervention or issue, and effect or evaluation. So I'll show you how to use this BI. We started in 1998 with this question. We noticed that people feel sleepy during Ramadan, and they complain that they are sleepy. This is in the 90s. So we started with a simple question, which is not the ultimate. It's a broad question, but at that time, we don't have the knowledge. Does Ramadan fasting affect sleep? And based on this question, we did some research, then we started to go into more complex question. How does Ramadan fasting and its associated lifestyle changes affect sleep and sleepiness? And then from that, we come with several publications I'll show you. Original publication that went to good journals, even Q1 journals. It's good if you can, and if you are lucky, to start with a question that no one has addressed before, because then you can be an international authority in that topic. So we started with a specific population, which is Ramadan fasting performance, intervention or issue, which is fasting, diurnal intermittent fasting, and an effectual evaluation, which is sleepiness and later sleep, and then a lot of things related to sleep physiological changes and things like this. We started with a broad question, then we went into more details. So people feel sleepy during Ramadan. We start with the question as we discussed, does Ramadan fasting affect sleepiness? With this question, we started our research. From that point, you have to go to your hypothesis. Now you have a good research question, you have to go to the hypothesis. So the hypothesis has few points that you have to meet to have a good hypothesis. Hypothesis should be based on some literature before, not on opinion. So the use of opinion is to be avoided. You cannot put your hypothesis based on your opinion, because at that point you will have bias, you have emotion, you have a lot of things. Because when I was submitting about initial submission early about Ramadan and sleep and Ramadan physiological changes, many of the Western journals, they think that I'm emotional because I'm Muslim and I'm writing about something Muslim. But now they don't take it like that, because people now they know about this topic. So you have to make sure that you justify it with some evidence. You have to have good idea about the background of the topic. And you have to have a testable question, then you can generate a good hypothesis. And you need to have independent and dependent variables in the question. Many of the good journals, like Q1 journals, if you don't have hypothesis, they will not look to your data to start with. They will reject it immediately if you don't have a clear hypothesis. So hypothesis is very important. So based on the question that we start with, then we generate our hypothesis. So the basic format to do a hypothesis might be, if these changes are made to a certain independent variable, then this will be observed a change in a specific dependent variable. So in our example, we have intermittent fasting. We can make changes, adjust lifestyle, make sure they sleep well at night, and they assess sleepiness. Then the dependent variable is sleepiness in Ramadan. I'll show you example. Example, students who eat breakfast perform better on a math exam than students who do not eat breakfast. And when you put a hypothesis, don't say students who eat breakfast may perform or could perform. No, have to be strict based on this literature review and our research question. Based on that, we come to this hypothesis, which is clear cut. Students who eat breakfast perform better, or you can say will perform better. So this is what we think. This is our hypothesis. Then we'll do the experiment to accept the hypothesis or reject the hypothesis. Students who have exam anxiety get higher scores than students who don't experience anxiety. Or you may say students who have exam anxiety get less scores than, based on your literature review, things related to that. Another example, motorists who talk on the phone while driving are more likely to make errors on a driving course than those who do not talk on the phone. So we have a research question, then we come with our example or with our hypothesis. So our hypothesis for the question was that Ramadan fasting does not affect sleep. And why we reached this hypothesis? We reached this hypothesis based on experimental studies, which look to experimental fasting, not like the Ramadan intermittent fasting, or studies on animals that assess their vigilance after caloric restriction. So based on caloric restriction, whether in humans or animal models, we find that it increases vigilance, increases concentration. So we come up with this hypothesis that Ramadan fasting does not affect sleep. And from there, we start with this hypothesis and we tested the hypothesis. Then we have a question, we have a hypothesis. We don't stop at that point. We have to go now and search the literature, because you may have a good question, a good hypothesis, but when you search the literature, you find that hundreds of people have done that before. So you go to known databases, search all of them, but I put here in blue Google Scholar. I think it's good because it gives you more data that even some good papers that are not in PubMed, you may find it there. So we started our search by combining fasting, sleepiness, and Ramadan, and we searched for that. This is probably 1998. So I'm not talking about now. This topic now has been studied a lot. So after searching the literature, you have to answer this question. Did we get an answer for our question? We start with the question, does Ramadan fasting affect sleep? Do we have an answer for that or not? If we have a good answer, then we don't have to study that. So do we have good data to support that? Some questions were not addressed yet that we may address in our research. Some data, but we have conflicting data, and there is no consensus, and there are some shortcomings of the published paper from methodological point of view that we can rectify in our research. And then the other question, what will we add to the literature? Because this is the first question that the reviewers of the grant will ask, and the editors and the reviewers of the journal will ask, what will this paper add to the literature? That's why when you write your introduction, you should put what will this add to the literature? Put it there, we'll come to that point. Will we answer unanswered question? Will we have a better methodology compared to the previous studies? Are we going to recruit larger sample size? Previous studies, they have smaller sample size, no global sample size calculation. Will we add some local experience that is not known? For example, now if we talk about the prevalence of asthma in Saudi Arabia, we all depend on the work of Professor He did his work in the late 80s. Work after that is small studies. So if someone come now and do a national assessment of bronchial asthma in Saudi Arabia, this is very important as regional work that probably is likely to be funded. We need this local experience because it will help the health authorities. Then look to the literature, critique the literature. You may do it by hand, you may do it now on your iPad, but critique the literature, what have been published, what will my work add, good comments, read the literature in depth. Then you can come with a good proposal. You can come with a good literature review that we are going to talk about. So we start with this question, does Ramadan fasting affect sleep? With this question, we published probably 40 papers or more. We started with one question, and we have tens of collaborators internationally in top universities. And even if you come with a good question, when they listed like who are the leaders in publishing about Ramadan and health, you find your name there comes up. So if you start with a good question and you are young over the years, you may become a world authority in that, but you have to start with a good question. Okay, so now we created our research question, hypothesis, we searched the literature, and we think that our proposal will add something new. Then we have to constitute our team now. So the team, ensure optimal collaborators. You have to read successful grants from your mentors and seniors if they have some successful grants, see how they wrote it. Establish your team. It's good to have with you a good statistician. If you don't have good background of statistics, of course, you have to have with you a good mentor and other experts in the proposed topic. Interdisciplinary collaboration improves your chances always. If you have collaborators from other disciplines, even if you have like basic science and clinical research, you have better chance of getting the grant. Collaborators from different backgrounds, this will enrich your project. Research is not a solo thing. In a sense, research is collaboration, as we said. Okay, now you start writing the proposal. I have my team, I have everything ready, I'll start writing the proposal. When you start writing anything, proposal, paper, just go ahead and do it. It may be difficult at the beginning, but just go ahead and start writing your proposal. The idea is clear in your mind now. The literature review has been done. Collaborators have been consulted. The proposal guidelines of the funding agency have been read carefully, so you are ready to start writing. Okay, background or literature review have to be brief and focused. You don't need details, and the reviewer, they don't need the details that's redundant. Have to be brief and focused. So what you have to do, the components, critically evaluate the existing knowledge. What has been done. You have to be honest and sincere in that and up to date, because the reviewers will search the literature. You cannot hide some information thinking that they don't know about that paper which has already addressed my question. They think that this is new. No, you have to be updated and honest. So background of the problem, what has been done so far, and then identify the gaps the proposed research is intended to fill. Very important. Limitation of previous research. Explain why it's a good idea to fund this research. You are like a salesman. You go and promote your product. You want to sell it. So you want to sell your project. Discuss and cite your previous work or your mentor work if it is there. Show the reviewers that your team can execute the project. This is very important because reviewers, especially for big grants, they will be reluctant to fund a junior researcher because this is like investment. If you have money now and you want to put it في الأسهم أو شيء من الأشياء هذه, and I don't know much about it, then you go to a company or something that's likely to win. You don't want to put your money in a company that's likely to lose. The same thing for the funding agency. They would like to give their money to a team who are likely to have something useful. They would like to give them a product by the end of the project, not to give it to a team, a losers or a loser team. So you have to show them that you can execute it. This is very important. I'll show you an example. I have reviewed several grants over the years. A grant is not a review article. Some people think this is a narrative review article. No, this is not a review article. This is you have to convince the reviewers that your project is worth funding before they go into the methods. So you have to convince them by having a solid, legitimate, original research question, a good, clear hypothesis, and that you will add to the literature because your idea is novel. So don't review the literature and copy and paste what people have done in a review article. I'll give you some examples now quickly, and I hope I can finish the time because I have to go faster. This one example of like in the background of one of our projects, researchers have demonstrated that experimental fasting alters the sleep-wake pattern of various species. Then what we have original. However, the results of such experimental fasting cannot be extrapolated to Islamic intermittent fasting during Ramadan because the duration of each fasting episode of experimental fasting is usually more prolonged than the duration of fasting during Ramadan. So Ramadan is shorter. Anyways, this is my work, but you have to justify this exam to justify. Mark Twain, the novelist, is known. He once said, "What a good thing Adam had." I don't know this. And this أعطيكم example. I Sayyidina Adam, when he said something, a good thing, he knew nobody had said it before. So what's the idea in the research? A key role in academic research is to discover something new or to say something that nobody has said before. If people have said it before, then there is no point. You have to show the originality of your work. This is an example. Prolonged fasting have been shown to increase plasma ghrelin levels in mice and rats. However, the changes in ghrelin plasma levels have not been assessed during Ramadan fasting in humans. So you have to show them the originality of your work. Some funding agency may ask for significance. Significance is not you summarize your introduction or your literature review and put it there. I saw that a lot. Significance means you have to determine concisely and clearly the importance of your proposed study. What's the novelty and innovation? Convey the significance of your research to, is it scientific contribution to the scientific community? Is it improving the public health in Saudi Arabia? Is it changing health policies like the work of Prof. when he did his work about the vaccination, hepatitis, changed the health policy and they started giving vaccination to all, and now we don't have hepatitis, alhamdulillah. Changes in patient care, will that do that? We have to, how will it add? Where is the significance of your work? This is very important. Importance for the country. And you are lucky if your work is fashionable, like Corona now. The last year, we have a lot of grantship about Corona. So if you are in that field, you have, as a researcher, we have to go into the field, even if you are close by it. I'm talking about myself. We went a lot into Corona with Corona. And we published, alhamdulillah, maybe more than 20 papers in Corona. So when you see something, link it to your, we did a lot of work, leading work on Corona and sleep. I'm not talking about Corona from the ID point, because that's not my field. I go to my field. So we did some landmark papers. Some of them, though they published like 3, 4, 5 months ago, they have been already cited more than 100 times. So go to your area and link it with something which is fashionable. Okay, so is your question in fashion? I'll put some comics just to keep you awake. أساس ما يكون المحاضرة boring. هنا هذا الرئيس الفندق يقول your proposal is innovative. Unfortunately, we won't be able to use it because we have never tried something like this before. So we have to example of significance, a limited number of studies, so on and so. But then at the end, we say the impression that fasting causes sleepiness resulted in modification of working hours and decreased productivity have changed some practice. For example, in some Muslim countries, if people fast, they don't let them do work that needs concentration because of some wrongly conducted studies showing that if you fast, you don't perform well. So we have to show them, no, this is important. We have to show them that if you fast in Ramadan, you get enough sleep, you have healthy lifestyle, then your concentration is not affected. And this is the essence of the from where you get this idea, and this is the significance of your work. Again, I'll give you examples of my work just to, I don't know what you do, each one of you, but just I give you something just to give you, to keep life. So is this justified? This is what the reviewers will ask. You see some grant proposal, they will ask, what's the goal? Then people get confused between the goal and the objectives. And I don't like goals and objectives, but if you submit for a grant and they put goals, you have to know the difference between goal and objective. Goal is the overall concept, more abstract, intangible، يعني مو هو ملموس، نظرة عامة، يعني زي الميشن والفيجن والاشياء هذه اللخبطة اللي يطلعونا اياها كل شوي. Broad statement of what you want to accomplish. It's about the final impact or outcome that you wish to bring about. I'll give you example. Example of a goal. Our goal is to decrease the degree of malnutrition among young children in Saudi Arabia. This is a goal. This is intangible, مو هو ملموس, and it's not testable. You cannot test it. هذه جملة عامة. How we can have the objective, a step toward accomplishing a goal. In contrast to a goal, an objective is narrow, precise, tangible, concrete, and can be measured. So the example of objective, the briefest goal is by the end of year 1, provide 100 mothers in Riyadh with a 2-hour training program that will provide health and nutrition information. So we have specific objective that we can test and measure. Then we can design our method to answer that. So for the objectives now, we'll move to the objectives. Different ways. One of them called SMART has to be specific, measurable outcome, achievable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. I can execute it in a specified period. This is very important. This is what the reviewers will ask. Is there a time period that you can execute your objectives or your project? So describe concisely and realistically what the specific research you intend to accomplish. Avoid grandiose design that you cannot accomplish. You don't have even the flow of patient to execute that, or the infrastructure. Over ambitious proposal that aim to do everything, or you list 11 objectives. You think this will make your project better? No, make it worse. You have to be specific. The less, the better. Specify clear objectives. So our objective from the question and hypothesis that we generated to assess the effect of Ramadan fasting. We have specified group and its attended lifestyle changes. We define specific things like delay in work starting hours, on sleep architecture, something that we can measure. You know, we have the tools to measure it, and daytime sleep, we have the tools to measure. So this is our objective, clear and specific, that we can test. Then we'll move to the methods. This is very important, but if you fail the initial part, the reviewer will not look to the methods, just they will skip it, because initial part is the preparation. If you fail that one, fail to convince the reviewer that this is something I should continue to read, because the reviewers are usually busy and their work is volunteer. So if you don't convince them in the initial parts, most likely they will not continue to the methods. So methods is also a very important part of the proposal. Design methods to meet your objectives. I have seen several proposals. They put objectives, then the method doesn't answer their objectives at all, like long-term effects, or then they are not following the patient for the long term. يعني they put كأنه كل واحد يعني كأنهم they assign their group of investigators، أنت أكتب هذا وأنت أكتب كذا وأنت أكتب كذا، which I don't like. maybe you can assign to people to do, but there will be one person at the end who's the master, who's reviewing and make everything is in harmony. اما تعطي كل واحد يكتب جزئيه يطلع كلام نشاز زوف لايف. Use simple language. Don't use اللغه المعقده, complicated terms that no people will not understand. And you have to remember that people who review your project may not be in your field. ممكن يكون في field ثاني. Make it simple language for them to understand. They are methodologists. They know about the methodology. They review the literature, but they don't understand if you use complex. So avoid jargon. الكلام اللي ما له داعي والمعقد بتعتقد انه هذا will make your project better. Make it simple and understandable. Avoid unknown abbreviations. Abbreviation, once I saw a sign OHS workshop. OHS for me is obesity hypoventilation syndrome. And I have done a lot of work on that. يعني I publish a lot on obesity hypoventilation. When I went there, I found something related to business. ما له علاقة بال عشان كده OHS أنا حسبته وانبسطت حسبته obesity hypoventilation. Needs experience based on previous research. So we have to read previous methodologies. You have all. If you read the paper now at your level as a junior researcher, don't jump to the conclusion. See how they market and prepare their paper in the introduction. Then see how they write their research. So frequent reading publication is very important. Look carefully into the methods of similar studies. Use standardized, validated methods. Avoid flaws of previous studies. And something, a common mistake, if you write methods for proposal, use the future-oriented talk. We will, not we did. Because we did means two things. Either you copied this method from a previous paper that had been already published, or you have published your paper and you copied the methods and you want to get money in retrospect, which is not grants or something to start your project. So make sure that you talk we will. Okay. So make it simple. This is just to keep you awake. A break here. These are the reviewers and the committee. They agreed that they will fund only those proposals that they understand. If you make it difficult, they don't understand, they will not fund it. Straightforward. Okay. Analysis is important. I see many researchers, when you say, write the section about the analysis, this is, I haven't done the project. How do you want to talk about the analysis? When you put your propose analysis, you have an idea how would you analyze your data. This gives a good impression to the reviewers and to the committee that you know what you want to do. Not you wait for something to be significant, then you will write your data based on that. This is an essential part. So you should write what do you expect. Predicted analysis of data. I predict, I know I'm collecting data for this and I know how I want to analyze it. This is an example. يعني I don't want to go through this. Like I read it quickly. يعني you don't have to take care about the technical part. Data from questionnaires will be coded and entered digitally into BC. Data from BCA, which is a device to measure sleep objectively, will be downloaded into computer, and data of each participant we have described will be extracted, individually entered into spreadsheet. Then we go into how do we expect or propose to analyze data. Comparison between 3 months, which is Rajab, Sha'ban, and Ramadan, and Shawwal, 4 months, will be done using ANOVA for continuous variables. Chi-square will be used for this. We are going to use this software. So we tell them we know what we are going to do. Not we wait for something, then we give the statistician numbers and say analyze whatever is significant or right. This is not how research is done. Abstract should be the last thing to write. A very important part of the proposal and of a paper. If I read a paper in a journal, even as editor, I read the abstract. Abstract will give me an impression whether this paper is something that I will consider to accept or not. So if I review a grant, again, the abstract will attract me or this is not a good. So it's a very important part, but keep it the last. Abstract has essential components. State your hypothesis. Always hypothesis is very important. Describe the significance briefly. Identify major objectives. Identify phrases with keywords in the methods section. Remove extra words and phrases. Make sure it meets the guidelines of the funding agency and structure that they want. Give it to a colleague and ask him if it makes sense. Because if you do your work and you read the abstract, you think it's clear. Give it to someone who doesn't know anything about the project. If someone doesn't know about the project, ask him, does it make sense if you read this abstract? You know what we are going to do? This is an example. I will not read it for you, but this is an example of one of the formats. You have to put research problem, Research significance, they want that one. Research objectives, research methodology. So you have to put it there. In the research problem, you put the problem and then you put your hypothesis there. Some grantship or agency will ask for Arabic translation. Please, نحن عرب, we should write in بالعربي. أنا يعني I met تشوفون الضايق من الزملاء يقول لك والله أنا ما أعرف بالعربي. طب ما شاء الله عليك أنت يعني ثقافتك فرنسية ولا إيش يعني ما تعرف بالعربي أنت من وين جاي؟ كل اللي يقولوا أنا ما أعرف بالعربي لغتهم الإنجليزية سيئة. The thing that don't put it in Google Scholar. Google Scholar has improved significantly. If you put it, just edit it after that. And حطيت an example هنا, one of the titles that we did, the effect of Ramadan intermittent fasting and lipid pre-oxidation in healthy young men while controlling for potential confounders. You put it in Arabic, that doesn't make sense. بعدين لما الريفيور يقرأ خاصة إذا كان هو يعني عروبي ويحب اللغة العربية, he may get upset. وأنت you don't like to get the reviewers upset from the beginning. لأنه إذا صار upset وبدأ يصير emotional ضد البروجكت, your chances are less likely to be successful. Go early to the ILB if it is there, because they may help you also improve your project before you submit for the grantship. Okay. Know your funding agency. Again, just will summarize. It's important to have a good mentor, understand the rules and regulations of the agency, check what's fashionable for that agency. If you can keep it that, like for example, sleep and corona, good, fashionable. Go and there, go and do it there. Maybe diabetes and corona, something like that. And then you have to polish, يعني تسوي مكياج لبضاعتك, للجرانت, للبروبوزل. إذا أنت في store and you present your product in a nice way, people will buy it. You have the same product, تحطهم ملخبط ومخلبط كده وعليه تراب ودستي وكده, no one will buy it. So you have to shine and polish. Very important. This, you are not deceiving anyone. Just you have to make it nice. How to shine and polish your work? Show the originality of your research. Always show originality, but avoid grandiosity. إنك أنت أحسن واحد وإن إحنا أحسن team. No, avoid that. Because this irritates the reviewers. Avoid redundancy and repetition. أنا أشوف كثير من grants. People they put the review of the literature, copy and paste, then they go to the significance, copy and paste, then they go to the abstract, copy and paste. It's boring. Strictly follow the rules and format of the funding agency. English language editing, very important. If someone who's good in English, let him edit it for you. Then we'll go to the budget in the coming part. We'll go to the budget quickly. I will not go to the funding agency لأنه هذا مو هدف المحاضرة اليوم. Talk about funding agency, and I know it's difficult to get fund. And my work is mainly with the King Abdulaziz City of Science and Technology خلال الخطة الوطنية, but I have dealt with several funding agencies. We hope that the Saudi NIH, inshallah, will come soon. Hopefully that will solve a lot of problems for the researchers. Budget is not how much you want. It's not how much you need. يعني احنا عندنا cultural thing. حتى إذا أنت مثلا تقسم you want 2 employees, تقول خلني أطلب للإدارة 6, then they will give me 2. أنا البادجت حقي يحتاج 50,000, let me ask for 100,000, they will give me 50. It doesn't work that way. This is a junior researcher, this is a senior researcher. Say, I need a budget estimate for my project, but I don't have a scope or a design for it yet. هذا الجونيور researcher تقول للسينيور. Okay, my estimate قالها 3 مليون something, أعطاها number كده. Senior قالت له you don't know anything about my project. جوابه كان قاتل. That makes 2 of us. يعني أنت you shouldn't ask, and I don't know how much I need or how much should I ask for. You should calculate it. Calculate it. ما تقول أنا أبغى كده وتحط number على كيفك. It's not how much money you want, it's how much the project costs. Very important concept. Ask for what you need to do the work. A cost must be reasonable. Justify requests that are significant or out of ordinary. I'll show you some example of justification. If you want something, a lot of money for something. Reviewers emphasize project quality over budget. This is a fact, but budget is also important. Follow sponsor and institutional guidelines and policies. We'll talk about that in details. For example, if they say we don't fund مكافآت rewards for the researcher, that's fine, because they will not fund it. They have a ceiling, don't exceed the ceiling. When in doubt, ask seniors or ask the funding agency. Read the guidelines carefully. Always I stress reading the guidelines. Consider the overall project budget before you begin to develop individual budgets for each year. If you have a project that goes for years, you have sometimes program that goes for years. I'll show you an example. Consider agency limits. For example, items that the funding agency will fund and items they will not fund. For example, if you not fund human power, then don't put it there. They will not fund it. Level they will fund until what level? Don't propose a budget over the level. If they say, for example, مكافآت أو الhuman power that you have should not exceed 30% of the total budget, then don't exceed 30% of the total budget. Number of years they will fund. If they have to do it only for 1 year, then make it for 1 year. They say we can fund for 5 years, you have to check with them for that. Outline the budget in the format the agency requests. Don't put your own format, fill their own format. Remember that the grant will not start probably for several months until they review and will include schedule. So submit costs accordingly and see how you will start planning. This is an example of a project with the Madam Abdul Aziz program for years that we have to fill I have to fill the formats and say how much for manpower and diagnostic system, consultants, other works, conferences, things, and if you have to put it all this way. If they want the personnel, then you have to put the personnel, how much, how many you will need, and this, and for 1 year, what will cost that. You have to put it in details. Equipment, if you need equipment, you have to put it as well. And so you have to put all the details that they want. Justification is important. In one of the projects that we have, phlebotomist, we asked to pay 6,000. You have to justify why 6,000. So, sorry, we have. Anyways, they were collecting 200 samples. So if you calculate 30 riyal per sample, it comes to 6,000. So you have to 20 blood samples will be collected from each participant around the clock, around 24 hours. A total of 200 samples will be collected from all participants. So you have to justify to the reviewers why you will pay a phlebotomist 6,000 riyal. You think it's a lot of money. This is an example, just one of my research to show you. This is an example of bad research, like when most of the fund goes to the manpower, around 140,000 for the manpower and 30,000 for the equipment and everything else. This kind of, they may not fund it. They may not fund it. And this is another bad example. You see, all the fund is going to الباحث الرئيس الباحث المشاهد, 80,000, and nothing for the research. They will not fund this. Okay, budget tips. Develop budget explanation to delineate clearly how budget figures were computed. كيف حسبتها. Ensure that the budget coincides with the narrative and falls within the time frame allowed. For example, I want to establish a lab. What I need initially I need to buy equipment. So initial few months, for example, the budget will go for the equipment. Then probably I'll start hiring technicians and train them. So this will be for hiring technicians, for the training course, for and so on. So then probably I'll get kits. So this narrative, the budget has to go with that. You can't ask for everything the same. This is important. Gantt chart, briefly, I think some people, they think, or family medicine in general, always they ask about Gantt chart. Just briefly about it. Gantt chart was started actually by engineers. Why started by a Polish engineer before Gantt? But Gantt in the US, then it came to be known under his name. All were engineers, and they were doing it for executing some construction, I think bridges or something at the time. So commonly used in project management is one of the most popular and useful ways of showing activities, tasks, or event displaced against time. Can be filled manually, but now there are softwares that can make it very complicated like this. So how to create a Gantt chart? Define the project settings such as its start date, end date, and scheduling mode. It's very important also in the project to include, they want to know how you execute your project. You have a clear plan. Define the project calendar. This sets the number of working days in the week, the number of working hours in the day, and so on. Enter or edit task names and duration. For us in the research, usually it's not as detailed as for the engineers. So our Gantt chart is more simple than for the engineers. Create links to specify the dependency between project and tasks. This you can do it electronically to make it easy, or you can do it manually. Make final adjustment to the project plan. This Gantt chart can be reviewed frequently, because usually when you have a grant, they will ask for interim analysis and reports every 3 months, every 6 months. So if you need to adjust your Gantt chart, you can adjust when you submit اللي هو التقرير اللي يسمونه النصفي ولا التقرير الكذا. عادة تقرير علمي وتقرير مالي. فترفعهم الاثنين. Inspect it at regular intervals to detect potential problems or scheduling conflicts and make any correction required. This is an example of one of our projects, like when you collected the data, when you do this hormonal analysis, write manuscript submission, something like this you can do. This is another example also, like patient recruitment, sampling and processing, patient follow-up, samples and processing, proteomic studies, data analysis, letter of acceptance, published paper, and so on. This is from the site of Guggenheim Foundation, Harry Frank Guggenheim Foundation. This is a funding agency, and I quote this from their website. See what they said. And if you submit a budget that contradicts any of these carefully described guidelines, you have to follow the agency guidelines, we will have reason to think of you as a careless reader and thoughtless applicant. يعني إذا ما تتبع الجايدلاينز. This will inevitably be reflected in our estimation of the potential of your scholarship. يعني أغلب ظنهم they will reject your project. So before submission الآن خلصت كل شيء، عملت كل الأشياء البوينت اللي تكلمنا عنها الآن. So put the first draft aside، لأنه مخك يصير تعبان جدا حتى في البيبل. Keep it away for a few days. اعمل something else. Go and relax. بعدين go and read it again. Then you will see the mistakes. لأنه مخك يكون مشغول ما تشوف أخطائك. Revise it for clarity and brevity. Be consistent. Make sure إنه كلامك مو متناقض. خاصة إذا كان different people wrote different sections. Give it to a colleague to read it. Language editing, and then submit. This is one of the grants, big grants that we had from King Ahmed S for Science and Technology. They sent it to AAAS اللي هي حقين الساينس، حق مجلة الساينس. هم they review for the NIH الأمريكي، وكانت تتعامل معهم المدينة. يعني they are the best people in the review. فأنا بس I'll show you examples one of my projects on their review. إيش النقاط اللي هم يهتمون فيها. I hope that you can read it. I'll read it for you. Point one, the quality of the proposed research. Is the proposed research innovative? هذا السؤال يسألونه. And these are the important questions to give you money. Can it contribute significantly to the state of knowledge in its field? Does the proposed research compare to established programs? يعني في programs أخرى ناجحة، يعني this will be something useful. I read for you point two, the impact of the proposed program. How well does the activity advance discovery and understanding while promoting teaching, training, and learning? To what extent will it enhance the infrastructure for research and education, such as facilities, instrumentation, networks, and partnerships? هذا كان program كبير، كان big grant، مو grant بسيط. What are the potential impacts on the institution? Will the results be disseminated broadly to enhance scientific and technological understanding? What may be the benefits of the proposed activity to society? Last point, واحدة عليها 5. The path to success, are the costs reasonable and the time and the resources dedicated appropriate? قلنا هذا اللي هو الجانت to the program. Is the management plan appropriate? Are there any issues that might prevent successful execution of the program? كل هذه البوينتس they asked. Then they give you score. يعني in this one we scored around 12 and it was highly recommended. And here in the details they look to the investigator. Can he execute or not? أنا بعرف إنه ما طلعت إياه. They talk about my name. You know, yes, we review his work and yes, he can execute. He is leading in this field of work and things like this. This was about Ramadan and Syrian. Okay, now the last part, inshallah, عندنا probably 8 minutes or 6 minutes. Why proposals are rejected? I'll go quickly through that. Automatic rejection, upfront rejections, formatting issues. يعني انت ما تبعت الفورمات زي المجلات. You don't follow their format, they will reject your work. You exceed the budget ceiling. حطوا السيلينج 100,000 انت حطيتهم 200,000 150,000. You submitted after deadline. Sorry, that's it. Then other things, project does not address agency priorities. يعني الايجنسي مثلا يقول لك انا مثلا I'll fund things related to rehabilitation. Then you have to modify your project in your field, do something related to rehabilitation. Or I'll fund only corona. Then go and work with sleep and corona, diabetes and corona, heart disease and corona. Don't talk about smoking and heart disease. They will not fund. This is again a break to wake you up. هذا يقول لهم هنا senior, thousands of excellent proposals, but not one uses our improved format. Don't use the format, they were rejected immediately. Not a compelling idea. Originality. We go back to the research question, hypothesis, and originality and novelty. Incomplete, inaccurate, or outdated review. Very important. You have to be honest and sincere and have good review of the literature. Critique what has been done, but you have to put what has been published. Don't hide some information. Insufficient problem statement. You could not state your problem clearly, and how will you help the literature or add to the scientific community? Methodology is not described in details or appear to be flawed. Poor experimental design. You fail to experiment to write that. Always keep in mind, you describe the methodology to make it easy for other people to replicate or duplicate your work. نفس الميثودولوجيا they go and do it. Overuse of jargon يعني تتفلسف كثير. Poor English grammar هذه مشكلة بالنسبة لنا. English is not our language. Overly ambitious. يعني أنت ما عندك أصلا infrastructure to do this, but you حطيت لهم أهداف مرة يعني. Narrative and budget do not correspond. I talked to you about this before, not spend much time. Overestimated budget, not justified, even if you are under the ceiling. But it's an overestimated budget. يعني ما أقول لك 100,000 ceiling, I have to put 100,000. If you need 20,000, put 20,000. You don't have to go for that. Do not follow the budget regulations of the funding agency. Sloppy presentation, يعني الكتابة ما هي جيدة. Failure to convince the reviewer that you can execute the project. This has to do with the researcher. Cite your work, get senior people with you who can help you. The work has already been done, again related to originality. This is long time ago have been published, where they look to why proposals are rejected. They find stating problem was around 60%, approach and methodology 73%, investigators. They could not convince the reviewers that they can execute the project 35%, and other 16%. So when you get anything rejected, whether a paper or a proposal, always you blame the reviewers. فهنا يقول هنا rejected their project. Is it just me, or are these review panel getting a lot tougher? يعني something you have to remember always that reviewers, whether للمجلة ولا للgrant, reviewers are never wrong, reviewers are never right. They simply provide an assessment of material that you provided in your application. So don't take it personally. حتى if you disagree with them, don't take it personally. يعني لأنه هم المفروض they declare conflict. عندهم conflict المفروض ما يراجعون. Okay, so if your proposal is rejected, don't give up. This is the message. I will go through all the points. Don't give up. Don't give up. Always don't give up in research. You need to be persistent. You need to have نفس طويل. You need to have good endurance. لياقة عالية. Don't give up. Don't give up. Again, Thomas Edison said many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. So you give up, but maybe if you take it one step further and resubmit again, maybe you'll get it, and then the chain will start. تبدأ سلسلة الإنتاج والنجاح. So don't give up. And research means doing mistakes. And Albert Einstein, I hope you can read this one. They say, if we knew what we were doing, it will not be called research. Would it be? يعني احنا ما نعرف يعني نسوي كذا نخطئ. Research again means making mistakes. So conclusion here, we'll conclude. What determines which grants are funded? Scientific merit, number one. Program consideration of the funding agency, availability of funds, and reasonable justified budget. These are the 4 points that will make your grant funded and approved. And when you write a grant, please remember that you don't write the application for yourself. You write it for others. So make it simple, convince them. Unless you are going to fund it yourself. يعني الواحد زي يشوف أولاده أحسن أجمل أولاد. ولا يشوف عيال الناس ثانيين شيء. نفس الشيء تشوف البيبر حقك ولا الجرانت it's the best. But هم ما يشوفونها بعيونهم. They don't see it with your eyes. They see it with their eyes. So try to convince them that it is good. So you must convince the entire review committee and the funding agency. So I hope that I taught you something now to overcome the obstacles in grant acceptance. And this, I think, is my last slide. Oscar Wilde, who was an Irish dramatist and novelist, he said, nothing that's worth knowing can be taught. Yeah, you have to do it yourself. And this comic is the last break for you before we go to the discussion. هذا في المكتبة هنا librarian وهذا يسألها تقول له يسألها عن هذا تقول له you will find proposal writing without failure and perfection. And there is nothing called proposal writing without failure. There is nothing called paper publication without failure. There is always failure. But you have to be resistant, endurant, and have to have passion for what you do to succeed. But you will fail. Even after years and years of experience, you will fail. But when you fail, don't give up. So nothing like I will not fail, because that's fiction. And I hope that you get your grant by the end of this, inshallah, and you do your research proposal, and thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Ahmed, for your outstanding presentation, mashallah, tabarakallah. And now for questions, please raise your hand or write your question in the chat. Okay, دكتور محمد سفياني.
السلام عليكم. الله يعطيكم العافية وشكرا جزيلا على الليكتشر وشكرا جزيلا يعطيك ألف عافية بروف باهمام. It's such an outstanding talk. I had to cancel one of my meetings just to attend this talk. You did not disappoint any of us. It was amazing, comprehensive, and very helpful, especially for junior faculty like myself. I was just wondering if you could say a few comments or words about the importance of collaboration and teamwork in research, because sometimes I feel that we, and many researchers, maybe in our region in particular, they still have some hesitancy and reluctancy when it comes to sharing data, sharing research ideas, working in teams. I'm not quite sure why exactly, but I was wondering if you could elaborate more on this, and what advice would you give to us as junior faculty in terms of approaching potential collaborators, as well as approaching senior researchers, be it people who are running research centers or heads of grant committees. How are we supposed to approach them? Thank you very much again, and thank you for organizing this talk.
جزاك الله خير يا دكتور. يعني حقيقة this is يعني تواضع منك انك تقول الكلام هذا. حقيقة you are يعني a senior investigator. الله يحفظك ان شاء الله. send a message. I agree with you 100%. I think it is in our culture, يعني من المدارس الابتدائيه، من الاول ومن الثاني، وهوز ذس وهوز ذات وهوز ذات، صار كلتشر عندنا. Then the criteria for promotion in the university where they put weight on single author, you have to have single author, then we try to solve it by having like ISI and things like that. The university asked us in the academic affairs in the medical city to put proposal how to improve the ranking of the university, and one of the main things we got that we should cancel this solo or single author labels, because research in a sense is collaboration, is a teamwork. Those who don't have the teamwork spirit, they don't do well in research. So you have to have collaborators, and then you complement each other, and you complete the gaps from different fields. You complete the gaps, and if you want to be also a prominent researcher and publish a lot of work, you have to have collaborators, because if you keep publishing on your own, then how many papers you can do a year? You cannot do. So to publish more, you have to have collaborators, and working with a team is also, to me, it gives more joy than working alone. How to find collaborators? I think our colleagues who just came from their scholarship outside the country, they should keep in touch always and a link with their seniors there. This will be the start. And then when you start publishing good work and people start to see your work, there will be a contact. There will be a contact between you and them. Or if you have a good proposal and good idea which is funded, you may approach, even if it is not funded, you may approach people who have been working in that field and ask them, I have this idea and I would like to collaborate with you. Do you have time and this and that? And some of them, you will be surprised. Like I have, for example, we have collaborators. We have currently a project where we held a meeting last week or the week before. We have around 50 collaborators from China, India, Europe, South America, Canada, يعني all. You'll be surprised when your name is known. And you'll find, on the other hand, people who just want to put their name will not work, and you don't work with them. So in summary, keep a link with your seniors and your mentors in your scholarship to start with, and publish good work. People will know you, and then they will approach you. If you have a good proposal, try to approach people prominent in the field and see if they are willing to collaborate with you. Go with them in that.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Ahmed. A question from the chat. What are the channels available to get a grant in Saudi?
Yeah, and I wanted to avoid this question because it's difficult and I don't have a good answer for that. بس يعني مدينة عبد العزيز الخطة الوطنية, the university sometimes they announce, like last year they announced for Corona some funds. There are المجموعات البحثية, research groups also, they are funded research group in the deanship of research عمادة البحث العلمي. So there are areas, and I don't want to go through that. You know, this يعني is difficult. أحيانا Ministry of Health they will announce something also for funding. You can get also fund from private companies like medical equipment manufacturer or drug companies. If you have some research that a trial that they think it's useful. So these are the areas. It's difficult, but يعني we hope, you know, with the Saudi NIH, and I was involved with Saudi NIH in the deliberation area where they were putting the proposal تصور له. I was involved with them في الكوميتي. بعدين خرجت من الكوميتي, طلبوا مني الآن في execution to be there, بس أنا ما كان عندي وقت. I don't know what they are doing now, but I know that they are working. That Saudi NIH will come soon, inshallah. We'll solve the problem.
Yes, Prof. إياد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شكرا يا بروف أحمد، ما شاء الله تعبت من بعدك، يعني غطيت ووفيت، جزاك الله خير. ودي I can't add much, but I want, if you allow me, to re-emphasize some of the major, what I perceive very important points. First of all, research question. It is a common misconception that people, researchers, put an idea and they want to execute it within a short period of time. I know a professor from Netherlands, his name is Shorwith from Maastricht. He says, if the research is new for me, new area, I have to read at least 60 articles. I don't want to argue whether 60 is too much or too little. The point is that it needs a good work, and they take 2 months in some of the universities like Maastricht University between one of the professors and one of the PhD applicant to write, not to do the research or to write the plan, to write the research question. And as Prof. Ahmed mentioned, research question is of prime importance. If you have a bad research question or less good research question, everything else you will do is of little use. And the writing is only cosmetics. It should be original, and you should be focused and passionate. Collaboration, I will buy from the business literature. One of the wisdom is that when you have a team, to take the good passengers in each station and to take out the less good passengers. So be careful, and collaboration is useful to achieve the previous point. Literature review. To make a good research question, you have to review the literature. One of my friends went to a European university and he said to the professor, I have excellent question. Then when he was directed to review the literature, he said nothing was written. Then he found that this question was answered in 1936. which means that if you, when Newton said that the apple fall into the ground, it follows or to the earth, it follows the gravity. We don't want to have a research to show that the orange also follow the gravity rule. We need to develop original, innovative study that have impact. Literature review is important to produce good results, and having one good research which has high impact is much better than having 10 research that are of less value. Some companies and university, they may ask you what is the best research you have done rather than how many research. Thank you very much, Professor Ahmed. It's excellent, one of the outstanding wisdom statements that I have heard. جزاك الله.
أبو عبد الله جزاك الله خير. الله يحفظك. أنت أستاذ من الجميع. الله يجزاك خير.
There is a question in the chat, then inshallah, Prof. Lubna. What is the best advice you would give to our new faculty members in terms of funding opportunities, especially if we are junior faculty and we just came back from overseas?
This is a good question. I think new researchers they have to find a clear line or path to go through. You can do here and there, jump here and there, research here and there, and you get promoted, but you will not be distinguished, not to have a line, because a good research question will build or will generate another question. A good research will generate more questions. A good project will generate more ideas. So as I showed in one of the slides, we start with one question, then we publish more than 40 papers. We have tens of collaborators all over the world. So you have to have a clear line if you can, and then excel in that line. Even for the promotion to professorship, the reviewers have been in the scientific council for 8 years. The reviewers, they put a lot of weight for professorship when you have a clear line of publication. So you have to have your clear line, you have good research question and good area that you want to investigate that is needed by the scientific community or by the country for different reasons. We need that information. Then another important point is you have to have an association with a good mentor, because this good mentor will give you credibility and will give you guidance. Will give you credibility because to give you the money and good money by the grant agency, they want to make sure that they give it to a team that can execute. زي ما قلنا تحط فلوسك في استثمار، تبحث عن الاستثمار الناجح. أنا هذه فلوس الجرانت عندي ما هي كيكة، احنا عندنا كلتشر في الجامعة إنه كيكة تقسم على، ما هي كيكة تقسم على الجميع. It's not. أنت you have something that ياخذ نص الكيكة نعطيك نص الكيكة. You can execute. واحد ياخذ عشر الكيكة ياخذ على حسب. So you have to, mentor will guide you, will help you and will give you credibility. على اساس انك اذا جونيور يتخوفون عاده to give you major grants. هذا باختصار. You have a clear line and a good mentor. المنتور هذا قد يكون في السعوديه، قد يكون خارج السعوديه، ما في مشكله بس you have to have a good team with you.
Prof. Lubna.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. BaHammam. I've really enjoyed this talk. I mean, I'm no longer junior, but I found many interesting points and it was really well prepared and well presented and very useful. So thank you very much. Thanks as well, طبعاً, Dr. Alina and her team, Dr. Abdullah, Khalid, and others. My question is not exactly on what you have talked about today, but it is very much related to it. And that is about the priorities for research. One of the major challenges that all of us in the field of family and community medicine face is that the research priorities are not usually addressing our specialty, are not addressing our scope of work. Even when there was a fast track for COVID-19 research, for example, there was nothing about epidemiology or public health or role of family medicine and so on. And I think this is partly because we as leaders of the profession have not done our homework properly. لكن ما هو هذا هو السبب الوحيد يعني. But what I would like to raise now is that I assume that when you start your field, your research on sleep medicine, that was not thought by many as a priority. And somehow, maybe the junior now would learn from you as an icon of research of what could be things that would help in order to let funders think of your area or the research question that you want to work on as a priority, so that they would release it as a priority for the future. I hope my question is clear. وأكرر شكرا.
يعطيك العافية بروفيسور لبنى. يعني أنا كنت خايف من سؤالك إنه أعرف حيكون tough question. ما سألنا سؤال tough question, but it's a tough question. بس أنا قلت لها story. يعني هو أحيانا you may not get يعني major grants, you may get small grants. أنا for me I started with small grants, 15,000, 20,000. Then you have to do research with whatever is available to you. أنا ما أبغى أيضا أتكلم على الزملاء probably they can't do it, but for some projects I have to do it from my own pocket. But I started to get the major grants 3 years or 4 years after I become full professor. يعني my major grant I got يعني which was in millions was in 2009 and I become full professor in 2006. فأحيانا you have to show people that your topic is important and you can execute and you can show useful information. And then how to do that is via research. And this is not only for research. I'll give another example. We have, for example, Saudi Arabia is one of the first countries to accredit sleep medicine and sleep technology. يعني في الهيئة صار لهم accreditation وتصنيف, which we published in 2012 after Germany and US. We were the third country in the world, and we were able to show that and to convince the Saudi Commission. We know how tough is the Saudi Commission for health specialties by doing research, national surveys, size of the problem, number of physicians per 100,000, what we can achieve by having people who are accredited for that. Then we convince them to go through the accreditation process, which was approved. Also taking this data, we were able to convince them, and this طبعا عندنا زمالة طب النوم في الجامعة من 2009, but this year we convinced the Saudi Commission to start a Saudi board for sleep medicine. Again, one of the leading countries in this field. Again, through research, what's the size of the problem in Saudi Arabia, what's the number of physicians, number of Saudi physicians, major areas in Saudi Arabia that don't have this service, how we can cover this, what number do we need to do this, what plan we have. So you can take it to something that will change also the decision makers. So you have to work, and I always tell juniors, use what you have, use the limited resources, because if you wait for the agency or the jama or your institute to give you all you need, probably you will go to retirement and no one will give you anything. So use what you have. Again, أنا بتكلم عن تجربتي, doesn't mean إنه أنا لأني كويس, أكيد زملاء عندهم تجارب أحسن, بس أنا I'll talk about because this is what I know. يعني إحنا we started doing sleep medicine by a portable device that was under neurology, and before they used to do EEG على paperwork على trolley. But this trolley was not used at night, so I used to take it at night and come at night myself and taught one nurse. I paid her like their study, and we did like 50 or something sleep studies, and we started publishing with that one. Then the machine got broken, كسرت الأقلام حقها لأنها usually for 30 minutes, you cannot run it for 8 hours. قالوا لي don't use it again. Then we started with a small lab. Some of you they remember it. It was very small, 6 by 6 meters. And with that one, we published a lot of paper. We showed them that we can execute, we can this and this. Then we moved to. So the idea is use the resources that you have and try to make the best utilization of what you have and produce something. Because if you wait for people to fund, life is competitive, and there are people who are ahead of you, and there are areas which the decision makers, they think it's more important than your field. For example, they would think now, for example, of diabetes now as important. They will think probably of transplant, because transplant will go to the media, they will think probably of oncology as something. But when you come to areas other like sleep medicine, they will not think. But now sleep medicine أنا رمضان بكمل 25 سنة في الجامعة. Sleep medicine is now of the areas of competency in the medical setting. And I don't know that they put it. And we had the presentation that day for international team. And because I'm in the administration of the Center for Academic Affairs, when the medical CMO presented his data, I was surprised to see areas of competencies في هذا sleep medicine من التميز الكومبتيتيف. يعني الجامعة considered our sleep center as one of the مراكز التميز البحثي, research excellency research. So you have to work. يعني I don't know, يعني you have to be persistent, you have to be لياقتك عالية, patient, you have passion, don't give up, good negotiator, don't create enemies, avoid confrontation as much as you can with people. لا تتخاصم مع الناس unless you have to, إلا إذا حطوك في المواجهة. Try to avoid that. If you have a track between point A and B which is full of holes, مشاكل وهذا, go from long way. يعني بدل ما تيجي من هنا go like this. But a track which is will not create problems and enemies for you. Make people love you, because if they love you and they like you, they will help you. كل هذه يعني أمور عامة, يعني دين والتوفيق من الله في نهاية الأمر.
سؤال من الشات. How can
just comment on this. So maybe the message is to be prepared to be proactive all the way. I think you were proactive من البداية واستمر هذا الشيء. And don't just wait for the priorities to be announced, and if it's there, then there are no funds. It's a long way. شكرا.
Exactly. الله يعطيك العافية دكتورة. احنا نتعلم منك, الله يحفظك.
Question from the chat. How can we use the proposal information to write the manuscript at the end of research?
This is a good question. حقيقة أنا يعني شفته وعجبني السؤال جدا. يعني another lecture sometimes I give, which is how to write a paper. A proposal, a good proposal will make writing the paper very easy. Because to me, what's the most difficult part of writing a paper is to convince the reviewers that my work is worth reviewing and sending, convince the editor first that it is worth sending to reviewers, and then convincing the reviewer that this is worth publishing. So the introduction, in my view, is the most difficult and most important part in the paper. Because introduction is not a review article. As we said in our discussion, it's what's the research problem, what's the research question, what's the hypothesis, and what gaps will my paper fill. And all these points you have addressed in your good grant or proposal, in your proposal. So this is easy. راح عليك جزء كبير من المشكلة. It's already there. Then objectives كل حاجة. They used to say the method will write itself. الميثود أسهل حاجة, لأنه أنت method is your area. أنت تبغى تسوي experiment, you know how to do it. If you don't know, then don't write a grant. method هو أسهل شيء في الكتابة. Then يبقى لنا بعد كده في البيبر results with discussion. The results, if you put a proposal or you have something in your mind, how will I analyze it to make it easy for you? If I have a team with me who will, each one of them will handle something, this will make it easy for me. So then we analyze the data. This will take time. We have a major problem, all of us in our area, we don't know how to present our data. We don't know how to present our data. يعني احنا نبدا بجود research question وجود hypothesis وجود methods. لما نجي بعدين في presentation of our data, we don't know how to present it. So we don't present it in a nice way, attractive way. And this one you cannot teach, but you get with experience how people are working with the scene. So you are left with the results. لكن introduction, hypothesis, research form, everything have been addressed. The discussion, to me, is the least important part of the paper, and many people they find it the most difficult part لأنها فيها شوية فلسفة وكذا وكذا, لكن في لها methodology to write. But it is the least important part of any paper, and no paper will be rejected because of a poor discussion. But a paper will be definitely rejected because of you couldn't convince them of the originality and novelty of work, all because of flawed methodology. So if you have a good grant, you have done, I would say, 70% or 60 to 70% of what's needed for a good paper to go, and you are left with 40% that is easier for you to do. and you can write your paper faster. Sound is not clear, they say.
No, it's clear for me. Maybe they're having an internet issue. The last question, Dr. Amjad.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Dr. Amjad.
Good afternoon, Doctor. Thank you so much for this helpful presentation. Doctor, I have 3 questions. My questions are simple, but I would like to ask if I have a proposal and I want to submit it, what's the best way to write the title of my proposal? As a question or as a statement? This is the first question. From your perspective.
Okay, the other question.
Okay, the second one, could you please clarify more, what does significance mean when you explain it in the abstract?
Okay.
Okay, the last one, what's the minimum number of previous studies to add it in my proposal?
Okay. The title we don't talk about. The title is also important, very important. Probably for the papers, it's more important than the grant, because a good title will attract readers. And I don't present some of our published paper with a good title, which is attractive. Try for the proposal, you can use it as a question, like I present, I think, one paper. Does Ramadan fasting affect sleep? This was so you can present it as, or you can present it as a statement. Both, but in general, the title has to be short, not very long, short, and convey the content of the proposal. Yani, if I read the title, I should get a good idea about what this proposal is discussing. Yani, when I read the title without reading the abstract or anything, I'll get an idea about what this title is discussing. For example, I know the study group, what group we are studying. I know the dependent and independent, main dependent and independent variable that this proposal is addressing. So it has to be as much as we can short, but reflect the content. يعني unfortunately ما حطيته ولا can I showed you some examples. For the proposal probably should be clear, but for the papers, if you get an attractive title, then you will attract more citations to the paper and more readers. I hope this find يعني explaining يعني in brief. Significance, some grant agency will ask you to put what's the significance. If they don't put it, then you don't have to state it. You can just state the research problem and hypothesis. But some grant agency, they will ask you for the significance. So as we discuss on the significance, you have to put what do you expect that this research project will add, either to the scientific community, to the country, to the health authorities. For example, if I show the size of the problem in a place, then probably we have to have more clinics, more physicians. Probably if we say a disease is more common in one area of Saudi Arabia, then probably we have to investigate. We'll have other research questions. Why is it in that area? Is there something there related to the environment? Is it related to something genetics like intermarriages or something? Try to get either general, broad scientific community as a whole, or something specific to the local community. So if they put it. For the minimum, there is no minimum. I think you have to cite, always try as much as you can to cite recent papers and landmark papers, even if they are old. Yani, if you have good recent papers, they have priority for citation in your literature review than the old papers. So the reviewers will know that you are up to date and your literature are updated. However, if there are important landmark papers, as Professor Iyad mentioned, yani paper that have answered the question 1936 or something, then cite that paper. I hope that I answered these questions and briefly.
Okay, I'd like to thank you, Prof. Ahmed. I believe we all enjoyed and learned a lot from your presentation. And thanks for all the attendees and Dr. Lina and the team for this organizing. If you want to add anything, Prof. Ahmed.
جزاكم الله خير. يعني thank you. أنا يعني as you probably they have asked you, يعني several people they asked me if this is recorded, they would like to have the link. So if you have it on a link, send it to me, so we share it. And I thank the Department of Family Medicine for the invitation. I enjoyed being with you today. I enjoyed the comments of our senior colleagues and enjoyed also the questions and the discussion. إن شاء الله تكون مفيدة إن شاء الله للجميع إن شاء الله. جزاكم الله خير جميعا. السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام. جزاكم الله خير.